But I think the biggest problem is I'm like 8 episodes in. No one has been to the Halo. On the show today, we're starting with No, we're not. We're starting with a soapbox on this episode because...
a weekly soapbox.
We're starting with a musical soapbox. There's a trend going on, and I wanted to discuss it a little bit about movies and television shows that are taking their inspiration not from comics or books or other mediums that they have in the past, but more and more are taking them from video games. I'm sure you've noticed that, Alex.
I try not to consume media.
Okay, so maybe you have been kind of holed up in a box and not talking.
I go, oh look, The Witcher is a show.
Yeah. Yeah,
then I don't watch it. Oh look, Halo has a show, which I didn't hear about till recently and didn't care about.
It is.
Oh and look, they made a Sonic movie.
They made 2 Sonic movies.
Which apparently turned out pretty good. Detective Pikachu looked interesting.
Detective Pikachu? I have watched Detective Pikachu.
I don't consume that type of media typically, though.
I also just watched an Uncharted movie that was based on the Uncharted
forgot they made
franchise.
that.
A lot of people apparently did. And the thing about it is that I didn't really want to sit here and criticize the fact that it's a bad idea, because I don't necessarily think it is, but...
Except it's a bad idea.
I think it is an ill-advised idea.
I think it's one thing if it's a cartoon show, for instance.
Sure.
Like Super Mario Brothers had a TV show.
Oh, yeah.
They also had a cartoon.
They also had a cartoon.
And that was fine in the age it was from. And Sonic obviously had a cartoon, which is fine in the age it was from. But movies and live action shows hit a little different.
Right. There was that Mario movie.
I was going to say, do you remember the Super Mario Brothers live action movie they did?
I never watched it, but the clips
What? You've never watched it? It is a
am
masterpiece.
Mario and Luigi Mario?
Yeah, it is. Nathan, you need to find it and watch it, and we need to have a Saturday special where we talk about this movie.
Okay.
I'll have to rewatch it. It's been years.
Yeah. Dennis Hopper as Koopa, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know actors. Have you ever seen the Super Mario? We're gonna have a Super Mario Brothers the movie watch date sometime.
Great.
And it's gonna be just as bad as you
We'll have a watch party. Great.
No. Just her and I. You can watch it by yourself.
Oh.
Yep, sorry. My couch is only so big.
Fair enough. You could do a back-to-back. That and what was it? The Mortal Kombat Annihilation? Was that the one?
No, we're not gonna. No. But Super Mario Brothers is worth a watch.
For reasons that are not necessarily great.
I don't rightfully remember how bad it is, but I know it was fairly bad as far as movies are concerned.
Sure.
But I think it was still entertaining.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that could be 20 years ago of age.
You know
speaking.
what?
I'm sure our audience is going to chime in.
Oh yeah,
I assume they've seen it.
It's more than 20 years, but the point is, there is that. I have fond memories, even though I knew that it was very kitsch about like the Tomb Raider films, like the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider films, even though they were kind of ridiculous in some respects, but they seemed to be having fun with it, so I was like going along with it. I watched the Uncharted movie, and I thought the Uncharted movie was okay, even though it was it was basically Indiana Jones, but yeah, it was basically Indiana Jones. The point though is that I think that the problem a lot of filmmakers seem to get into when they're making television shows and movies off of video games is they're like, well, this is a really popular video game franchise. We're going to make it into a movie because then it's going to be a popular movie, not realizing that video games and movies are different things. They are very different in how people consume them, how people look at them. Video games are an interactive medium. They have a specific investment where the player is part of the world that they are inhabiting. Movies are a passive experience where you are watching a screen and the screen is informing you of the storyline as you're going along. And the thing about it is that I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it does change the way people interact between these two things. I can't just take the video game. They tried this with like things like Doom, where it's like, okay, when I'm playing Doom, I'm the Doom Slayer, and I've got the shotgun, and I'm going around, and the demons of hell are popping up all over the place. When they did the movie, though, there was a whole part in the movie where it was like they tried to show you behind the camera where you're like in the first-person perspective as if you're playing Doom, but you're not controlling the movie. You're just watching the action on screen of them doing the game part, and that's very, very different.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's a different experience. But even when they try different projects, it's like I just said, like the Uncharted, because let's face it, the Uncharted games basically did take a lot from the adventure genre of like Indiana Jones, so it makes sense. It makes sense that they can translate that back to the Nathan Drake and going on an expedition and trying to find these buried ships and Spanish gold and whatever. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. You can't just do it for everything, though. It's not.
Can't you?
Well, there's been a lot of people that have tried to make fighting games into movies.
I was just thinking in my head, why haven't they tried to make Devil May Cry a movie?
I mean, they probably will at some point.
I hope not, because what's, like, for instance, with this one, what's fun about Devil May Cry is that you're playing Dante. So you're like, oh yeah, my character's this smarmy asshole.
Right. Right.
But you get to have the fun and do the things that he does and be cool and stylish. Watching that as a movie
take something away from the experience.
Would take a lot out of the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like watching someone play the game is different because they're commenting on it as they do it too.
Sure.
And conversing with you, but watching just that.
Yeah.
Weird.
It is. And I think that this is where you kind of get into the things that are going to work and the things that don't seem to work. Like, I never really focused on Mario for the storyline, let's face it. It was not a story-rich game. It was a platformer. It was about pulling off these maneuvers and the gameplay. The gameplay was central to a Mario title. It
was about the performance, Nathan. Mario is a play.
Yes, I do know this. Shigeru Miyamoto has talked about that. The characters that are in Mario, Bowser, all of them, they are essentially actors on the stage, which is why they can be in different kinds of... But none of those should have been movies. Like, no. none of those actors, the Bowser should not have been in the movie.
See, now I want Shigeru Miyamoto to make a Mario screenplay.
Yeah, do it as a play.
It's actually, like just the screenplay, even if it's for a movie, but like in the actual game world universe, like this is something that would be a thing they do. That would be a lot better than the Super Mario Brothers movie they made.
Oh yeah, no, fair enough. And I mean, they could lay it out just like in Paper Mario, where the curtains go back and it's on the actual.
I mean, there were curtains in Super Mario Brothers 3 as well.
Oh, that's
the opening of the screen came up with the curtain.
With the curtain, so, yeah, because that's how it's built. Yeah, but whenever they start talking about doing either like a Metroid movie or a Zelda movie, there's a reason why people get very, very worried about that, because that's not how those function.
They did a Zelda cartoon. It did poorly.
Do you remember that like old Zelda game that they did for the Magnavox or whatever it was?
No.
But they voiced Zelda in Link in that.
You don't voice Link.
No.
Oh, maybe that was it. Was the cartoon for the game?
Yeah.
Okay.
The poorly drawn one. Yeah. Samus, same thing. Samus Aran, I don't know if she translates all that well to a movie format. she's kind of better as the silent protagonist that goes in and shoots a bunch of alien Metroids in space.
Yeah, but people would watch that for the same reason they watched Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I understand that. But remember, though, while we're on the subject of when they tried to voice Link, there was that game, The Other M, where they gave Samus a voice, and instantly she was less interesting. because what they did is they decided, like in previous Metroid games, she was kicking ass and taking names. It's no nonsense. We're on a mission to stop Ridley and Kraid and Mother Brain, all of them, and we're on a mission to do that. And when they did Other M, they had a whole storyline basically where she was going through. She couldn't use parts of her arsenal because some commander dude that she used to work for, that she doesn't even work for anymore because she's a bounty hunter, told her, I'd prefer if you didn't because we're trying to take care of the situation. And she just kind of like went along with it and was like, all right, I guess that's what I'm going to have to do. And it's like, what did you do to Samus? Don't do this to my girl. And I was just, the whole time I was like, I think that this just loses so much in translation for these characters because when you're playing the game and you're playing as Samus, you're like, this is badass. And then when they get to the cutscenes where you're watching her make bad decisions, you're like, this doesn't translate well. And unfortunately, a lot of times movies and television shows, when they translate this over, will also have the characters make pretty stupid decisions that don't seem to make good character choices.
Yeah. See, I was thinking here now where... See, that doesn't seem to translate so well with video games and movies.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop, that type of stuff, tends to translate pretty well in a lot of cases.
Maybe because it's open-ended and it's character-driven?
Probably because it's more character-driven.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily have to have, like Dungeons & Dragons will have some characters that are kind of legendary characters in the, game. But if you're just talking about, like, creating an adventuring party, every adventuring party is going to be different, so you can practically build that from the ground up anyway, if you're building the characters for a movie or a show or anything like that.
Well, like, Lord of the Rings is an adventuring party.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and
Here's your quest. Go do it.
And I mean, let's face it, a lot of what happened with D&D and the, structure there came out of Lord of the Rings too.
Sure.
It definitely did. But I've been watching like the television shows are a big part of this now. They take the, format of a game, and they turn it into a television show. Maybe because they think the movies are going to be faster, the television shows you have more time that you can like do it episodically. And that I think works occasionally if you understand the basic material and storyline. Like The Witcher seems to work pretty well. It got, I watched it, a lot of people did, they enjoyed it, knowing that there were originally books before it was a video game. But I don't think without the video game you get the television series. It didn't really become popular until then.
Right.
But more than that is like they kind of understood who Geralt was and who Yennefer was, and they kind of understood those characters and thought that they would flesh that out and those relationships and Ciri and all of that. I'm watching Halo too, and I think it's okay. I'm with it. I'm sticking with it until I see where the end is here. But it's very obvious that the problem people have with it is that it doesn't seem to really understand who the characters were from the games. Master Chief is, like, John is more often out of uniform than in uniform. That
doesn't happen at all.
Exactly. That's and I understand it. Like, it's kind of hard to have character development with somebody who's continuously in the green armor.
In a suit of titanium armor.
Exactly, but there's much more time where he and the other Spartans, because they have like Silver Team and all of them, are not in any kind of armor at all. They're just out of costume, out of suit. And that kind of also happens a little bit for the Covenant as well. But I think the biggest problem is, I'm like 8 episodes in, no one has been to the Halo. I'm like, the fucking games start on the Halo.
You gotta start in media res.
Well, the thing, they've been leading up to it this entire time, and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. You're talking about
lead up to it.
Yeah, you're talking about Madrigal and the people that were trying to fight against the UNSC and break free of the free colonies, and about what happens with the Cortana program and control.
Listen, I haven't seen any, and I don't know anything about this show because I don't care.
Right, right.
But I think the way you fix it is you start in media res. You start during guns blazing.
Yeah.
You open up the entire series, guns blazing, like coming into a firefight, killing some elites, something like that, and then you take it back to the briefing of your mission.
What's interesting is at least they did one thing for you, Alex. The very beginning of the show, they're on Madrigal, they're on the planet Madrigal, in a colony, everyone's sitting around, the Covenant attacks, starts disintegrating everybody. Elites are down on the ground, and there's this giant battle set piece between the elites and like Silver Team Master Chief, and and it's just like probably a 5-minute or 10-minute long action set piece. At which point afterward they go Halo, and the opening credits show after that whole thing. It's not in media res though, because they directly go to the aftermath of it. What they really could have done that would have been useful is if they started the whole damn show with that part at the end of the first game where you're in the Warthog and running away from the collapsing facility that's being blown up behind you, shooting everything that you possibly can as everyone runs away. And then you'd be kind of like going, wait, how did we get here? And then then of course you start on the Halo.
Much better for something like that to start towards the end of something, and then it's like 5 months prior.
Yeah.
And then it's like, how did we get here? How did we get here? I want to know how we got here.
Exactly.
What happened to lead to this? Because then you're suddenly invested from the get-go. You're like, no, I'm interested because this is interesting.
Right. So, like, as somebody who's played the games, I'm like on a slow drip here where, like, oh, the Covenant's attacking. Oh, that's a jackal. It's the first time I've seen the jackals here, and the grunts. Okay, the grunts. Oh, look, the brutes showed up eventually. Like, and it's like this slow drip. Like, there has not been a point yet and the season is almost over. It's got to be, where one, they have made allusions to having a vision of Halo, but as I said, no one has gotten to Halo or seems even near Halo. Flood hasn't showed up at all. And I kept thinking to myself, my God, the original game was episodic. You could have just made every episode of the show based on each episode of the first game, right up until the climactic end of that. And instead you kind of focused on like the scientists that were behind the scenes and the military stuff that was going on behind the scenes that gets you to the ring in the first place, which I think is the missed opportunity.
It's Halo Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
It's Halo Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There you go.
I haven't seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I just assume it's that formula.
I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I feel, honestly, side note, I feel bad for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because they did everything that they possibly could, considering there was a continually changing landscape of the MCU that they had to work inside of. Like every time something happened in the MCU, they didn't necessarily have actors but they had to modify their storyline so that it could incorporate the stuff that was going on every time a new movie happened. Yeah, I feel sad. I feel sorry for them. They tried.
Alternate timelines, guys. Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of established that that's a thing now. If only the multiverse of madness had happened while Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was going on, they could have just gone and done their own thing without having to worry about it.
Anyways,
Anywho, the point I'm trying to get to is that if you have games that are very narrative heavy and they really do focus on storyline that's a cohesive, like, through-line narrative, you can translate that easier to film than you can for ones that are very action or gameplay heavy. It becomes a lot easier. But if you do want to do that with something like a Halo, make it an action set piece. Make it something that is going to really focus and emphasize the things people liked about the game, because whether or not you're trying to get people invested in this world or not, chances are the people that played the game are going to be interested in the movie or the television show based on it, and they're going to be your base for finding out if there's anything viable there for a series.
Yeah.
So,
or a trick is use a very story-heavy game like The Witcher.
Yeah.
And not an action game like Halo.
Like Halo, right.
Or Super Mario Bros.
There is going to be, and I think this is the reason I want to talk about it now, is because there is something that is going to be coming down the pike in the next year or so that does worry me a little bit. There is going to be a television series based on Fallout.
No.
Yes, Alex, it is happening. Sorry.
Why?
Good point.
I hope it's based on Fallout 76.
Here's the thing. I don't even know if it's going to be based on any of the games, if it's going to be any of the wastelands that we're familiar with, and I don't know if I want it to be, honestly, because if it's going to be based on the Capital Wastelands, the Mojave, the Commonwealth, I'm going to constantly make comparisons to why it did or did not work. And if they try someplace completely different, maybe I won't worry about it.
I don't think that sounds good.
I don't know how they make it work. That's the problem.
They're trying to capitalize on zombies in a post-apocalypse, I'm sure.
Ghouls, I tell you. Ghoul zombies.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to find out what that entails at a later date.
I'll probably watch it at some point and probably have my head in my hands the entire time about why they did this to me. That's like trying to make Elder Scrolls a television show.
Honestly, if they're gonna do a Fallout, like, series, show, my best guess is it would fall in the realm of New Vegas and the Mojave.
If they were smart, because it starts off with a bang and it never lets go. Like, you could actually have episodes that made sense for every single part of that.
Sure, they don't have to follow the game itself, but I think that setting would do well. It's pretty well developed and there's a lot going on.
As a post-apocalyptic, like, Western setting, that's very popular too. People like that kind of thing.
Plus, it could be like, the fight for New Vegas could happen.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got Caesar's Legion and all the other parties involved. Maybe you could be, like, following Benny, for instance.
Yeah.
You don't have to follow the courier. You shouldn't follow the courier.
No.
But maybe, like, a series for Fallout based in the Mojave where you follow around Benny and his crew.
Oh.
That would be interesting.
Oh, or this would actually be interesting. If they're going to do New Vegas, you follow around Ulysses.
The general?
No, the courier that came before you.
Oh, I didn't know who they were. I think Benny would be better because, he's kind of like a thug.
That's true.
No,
that's true.
And then it could lead up to the death of the courier. And it would be like, big brain.
Yeah. The reason I only say Ulysses is because there's a thing really early on where you realize that Ulysses specifically decided to decline the package for the Platinum chip so that Courier 6 could carry it, which is you. And so a lot of what that storyline is, though, is fleshed out in the DLC. but
Gotcha.
right up until the very end, where a huge portion of like the courier's specific story intertwines with Ulysses' personal story,
Gotcha.
which kind of wraps that up. But yeah, sure, do that, or just have a whole thing that they'll probably end up doing, which is just the interpolitical system of the NCR.
There you go. Perfect. And on that note, speaking of wrap-ups, I think we've talked enough about not making video games into movies.
In a
Please don't.
world where you constantly see Master Chief's face.